Hello everyone, it's Karen Foley. We're here at the Calabasas Library for Authors Night. Our guest is Carrie Shubert, who has written In the Wake of Lies, an autobiography, Living in the Third Dimensional soap opera, a spiritual guide to sanity, and then also has done a meditation tape. Carrie, if you are thinking, aha, she looks familiar, may be familiar to you because she was a Calabasas resident. I met Carrie when she was giving a talk at the Calabasas Senior Center. What was the title of your talk?
I don't even think it had a title. I was just doing demonstrations and talking about spirituality and parapsychology,
yes,
psychic ability.
And had quite an interesting upbringing. I was just remarking to Carrie before we started that we all have or claim to have had dysfunctional families.
Yeah.
But then when I read about yours, it was more than a simple unhappy, dysfunctional family. It was quite traumatic.
Well, the dysfunction was actually my in-laws more than my parents, because my parents were more normal. I was the black sheep of the family out of 5 kids. I was the oldest, and I was growing up and going through puberty during the 60s era where it was all hippies, and I wanted to be a hippie rebel, yeah.
And why not?
Exactly.
But your marriage was not as successful as you would have hoped.
Mm-hmm.
And you went through a lot of trauma on that, but you persevered.
Yeah, that was where the dysfunction was. I'm married to a man who was one of 5 kids, and 5 out of 5 kids were crazy, and it came from the mother. So it was. The book is basically about my journey from codependency, from addiction and codependency to finding a life of purpose on my own and raising 3 children on my own.
That must have been quite the challenge.
It was. There was a lot of crying and there was a lot of yelling in my households.
But you have made it through.
Yeah, I survived.
And
no gray hairs.
Well, none that we can see.
Exactly.
And your children are okay?
My kids are great, yeah, they're great. One of the things that they learned through all of it, I was in a support group. I was in a 12-step program, and what really helped me was in my parenting with them, to teach them that, one, when they did something I didn't like, I could say, I don't like your behavior, rather than I don't like you. And when it came to the divorce, and because there was so much media and craziness around my ex, I was able to say to them that this isn't because of who you are, and anybody can have a baby, not everybody can parent. So that they'd learn to separate what was going on from who they were as a person. So a lot of the tools I had to learn along the way.
So you were going through the 12-step program along with the divorce situation.
Yeah,
that must have been a double challenge.
Actually, I've been in one for 36 years, so it was before I went through my divorce. It was in my 8th year of sobriety. Yeah.
Are you still going to meetings?
Yeah, I'm very active in that, and going to rehabs to speak to people so that when they get out, they have a place to know that they can go for support. So it really, for me, is about taking the edge off of stress, off of life, and learning how to let go and go with the flow of life, which is why I wrote both books while I was going through my divorce. It was my spiritual growth and learning how to go through something. It was actually like being in the eye of a hurricane, that you could have all the chaos around you, but learn how to stay centered and peaceful instead of caught up in all the insanity while I was going through it.
Well, one thing that I did find interesting that ties in with why I went to your seminar on ESP and all of these different psychic feelings and knowledge and practices is that you have a gift, an extra sense. And when did you know that you had this clairvoyance, these psychic gifts?
I would say part of my dysfunction was from the time I was 4 on, I would say maybe around 4 years old, I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't feel like I was part of this family. I didn't feel like I fit in with people around me. I knew things that other people didn't. I remember looking at the sky and thinking I was from another planet. Some of that were things from my childhood, but I would say a lot of that was because I had a perception of things that was different than other people. So
Can you give me an example? of
yeah,
what you
when
mean?
I was maybe 4 years old, it could have been sooner. I felt like I was seeing people in my bedroom at night, like monsters or aliens or deceased people. I would feel vibes. I would feel energy that was uncomfortable. As I got older, if I was in a location where somebody had died, I would pick up on the spirits. I would feel the energy of the place. And that's why I did a lot of self-help things along the way. I was trying to figure out where I belonged, and why I was different. And the more I pursued things like self-help groups, the more I was able to come up with ways to control and develop my own ability.
When you were younger, did you discuss this with anybody? And what was their reaction?
So I would say things to people and they would say, "How did you know that?" And that's when I realized also that what I was doing was different than what most people knew, because you think that everyone's like you until people are saying, "Well, how did you know that?" Then it's like, well, wait a minute, you're not seeing the same thing. Early on, though, too, they used to have what you refer to as ESP specials, or ESP. They had ESP specials on TV, and my mom used to watch those. I grew up with The Twilight Zone and Night Gallery and some of those shows. So, and Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, she was my mentor. So I loved all those shows. Anything that was metaphysical and paranormal was what I was drawn to.
Did you ever contact any of the universities like Duke who did studies on these things?
Yeah, I want to go back to something, though, that my cousin reminded me of, because for the family dinners on Sundays, we used to go to my grandmother's house, and I was close to all my first cousins. And my cousin reminded me that I used to hold these little seances in the bathroom when we were like 10. I'd lock us all in there, and I would say, I don't know if you remember the actor Ed Wynn, who was from
Yes.
Bewitched. I used to say, "Ed Wynn, come through." So I used to try it, and Alice Ghostly. So I used to hold little seances. So,
How did the people,
yeah.
do they enjoy them?
My cousin was laughing about it, so I think they were okay about being held captive. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, now, how did you get started working for the public to use your gift for public service, really? You give lectures and classes? What do you do?
It became a career in 1979. So I was working for a city councilman, but in the meantime, I was really exploring my ability. I took a course in the late 70s called EST, and a lot of the workshops. Yeah, EST.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
it was a seminar where you really get to see how you're cause in the world and not a victim anymore. And then 3 weeks later, I took a course called the Silva Method, and it was all about seeing where we're all connected. It was actually more of a metaphysical, like if you visualize and set goals, you make things happen. But what happened out of that course was that my psychic ability just it exploded. And I was able to really control it and see things. And so I was living in an apartment in Tarzana at that time, and I was in my 20s, and I started inviting people in that would come into the courtyard, people I didn't know, and I'd say, "Come on in, take notes, give me the name of someone I don't know," which obviously I didn't even know them. And I'd have them take notes, call the person to verify the information I was getting, and then give me feedback. And when I saw that I was right on the mark all the time, I started doing psychic fairs. So that's when I started doing that professionally. As far as for if you're talking about groups like missing persons.
So we're going to get into all those because
Okay.
they're
Yeah,
amazing groups.
that was later on.
But when you did these things, did you use something? Did you use a crystal ball? Did you use the Ouija board, the tarot
Okay.
cards?
I started playing with some tarot cards in 1979 and using those, but my clairvoyant ability was really strong. So, for those that don't know what a clairvoyant is, it's actually the ability to see things. So I don't use anything
Physically
now.
see them.
Yeah, I see them in my head and
That's
my
quite
peripheral
different
vision.
from a Ouija or a tarot.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
forecasting.
Yeah. Well, psychic, I think, is forecasting, is seeing the future, and clairvoyant is actually seeing. There's clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient. So I use all of it. I
Could you
feel
describe
things.
the different types of clairvoyant?
Clairsentient is there's clairaudient, so I hear things. I'm an empath, so I feel what people are feeling. So if I'm reading somebody, and I don't use cards anymore, I haven't for 23, 24 years. But what would happen is if somebody has a backache and I'm reading them, I'll feel the pain. I can see different issues that are going on in the body. I've been doing it for a long time, and I would be really bored if I stuck with one thing. But because I also teach it, I am always challenging myself and trying new things. So sometimes I'm able to actually see what's going on in somebody's body. I'll get calls for lost and found items, and this is over the phone. For diagnostic, I have read people to find out what's wrong with their
I'd like to
horse.
go through those things because I was absolutely amazed of the different facets
Yeah.
in this gift, this talent that you have. I share a lot of experiences, and my family has had a lot of the similar gifts that you have, and it's very difficult to live with these things because you know, and what can you do about it? Can't change it, but you know about it.
I've got to say, when it comes to dating, it is a deal killer. So I have to tell people I'm going out with that it's like you have kryptonite in your head. I can't, or a metal plate, and that I have to do. In my personal life, it's the same thing. I have to go by my own gut feeling and intuition. And sometimes the difficulty is I'm trying to figure out, is it because I'm a psychic I'm picking up on this, or is it my own stuff about relationships and trust issues? So sometimes it's hard to separate that.
Well,
Yeah.
but yet I can honestly say I don't think I've ever been wrong about a person. Ever. Once I thought I was, but then I learned you can still know everything you know about a person. You may not respect them, but you can still have them as part of a group, still deal with them, be perhaps an acquaintance of theirs, but you know. And I don't feel that people do change. And if you can spot what somebody is, it doesn't stop being disappointed in them and being hurt by them.
Well, some slip through the cracks. They're pretty good at it. So then you can't always tell, because here's the thing. We all have to go through stuff. We all have challenges, and we have our attributes, and we learn how to make them work together. But nobody can have a life that is so perfect. Otherwise, you wouldn't learn and grow from the things that come up in your life. That's why the universe throws you sometimes an earthquake or a health issue or a financial thing. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. You learn how to roll with it. Yeah, so you learn how to roll with it. But there are some people, it's that they're going to come into your life. I had to end up with the person I did in order to have 3 kids. So to have my children. So it was part of my script, and also to write a book, also to go through my own experiences so that when people call me and I'm working with them, I'm coming from been there, done that, so I can relate to them. If I had a perfect life, it would be really hard to give people the tools to get through a tough segment that they're going through. So I'm kind of like a psychic life coach.
That's why I really admire you. You're not sitting there and licking wounds and feeling sorry for yourself. You've made something of yourself. You've become the person you are trying hard to have become, and you became. And you're going outside of yourself to help others, and that's really remarkable. You go to bereavement groups.
Yeah, I want to say that service work is such a great way to get out of self.
Yes.
When I was going through all the craziness, I started doing like some volunteer work where I would go into like the VA hospital, the rehabs. And at first I felt like, well, what do I have to contribute? One, it was a self-esteem builder, but two, when you're focusing on helping others,
You don't
you
feel
get
sorry
out of
for
your
yourself.
you get out of your own stuff. And also I started to look at things, my perception changed, that maybe these are quality problems, they're not life and death. Yeah, it felt good to help others. I used to think that I've always been into helping others, but I learned that if it's unsolicited advice, it's criticism, not
Yes.
support. Whereas I used to think, oh, I'm going to tell you about your life and what you should do. But that was also the way I had to not look at myself and press beyond my comfort zone.
What do you do in the bereavement groups? How do you help them?
One of the first ones that I was working with was POMC, which is Parents of Murdered Children. And they have chapters everywhere. But when I was living in Arizona, I connected with some of the people with the Arizona chapter. And so occasionally they would have, well, they had different psychics, clairvoyants come in. So maybe once a year, it might have been a little bit more, they would have me come in. And I would sit in the middle of a circle with the parents around me, and I would tune into their kids that had been killed and had been murdered. So it gave me an opportunity to give them information that they knew I couldn't know, not about the murder, but about their life. So because they were left with a phone call of how their kid died and was murdered, and I got to leave them with happier memories and the person's sense of humor, things that I couldn't have possibly known. So it was actually uplifting for me. And what was incredible is to see the courage that these people are there to support each other and go through it. I mean, I don't know how I would be if one of my children passed away, especially murdered. It's heart-wrenching, but yet they are such an inspiration. And the fact that they help each other through it. And many of them do create foundations. They do something positive with it. The other bereavement group that I recently worked with, I was at Unity Church this last October, is a group called Helping Parents Heal. And that's for parents whose children have died from either illnesses. It isn't necessarily a murder. It's just that their children have passed for whatever reason.
And you travel out of state many times to do these things.
That was just in Arizona. I don't really fly around a lot. I had kids to raise, so I couldn't really take off. So mostly it was local, either in LA or in Arizona. So between the two, it's easy enough to drive to.
And you've been on television?
Yeah.
What types of programs?
There was a program, Sonoran Living, in Phoenix, which is on, I think it's KABC. So they had an audience, live audience here. They advertised for a live audience, and I went around and tuned all of them in. And then there was a short-lived Jimmy Donnelly show. Mostly I did a lot of radio out there. I was on Morning Drive on Camel Country and a station called K-Zone. I was on that every month, 98 to 99, and then I hosted a show on Voice America 5 days a week. So I've done a lot of radio stuff, and then I've done some national radio, and lately people do podcasts, so things like that.
Do you do podcasts or speak on various people's podcasts?
I go on as a guest. I don't
Have you ever thought of
yeah.
having your own podcast?
No, I've been
Too
asked
much
to do it.
responsibility?
I'm too busy, and then after work, it takes so much out of me
I
that,
would think it would. So
yeah.
much emotion.
I mean, I do yoga and I work out at the gym, and I was a runner until about 7 weeks ago when I have a torn meniscus. So I can't wait to get back to it. I do different things to try to clear the energy so that I can be the best I can be for my clients. It's like recharging my batteries so I can be helpful to them.
You've worked with the police as well?
I've done some things with some of the police, and I'm written up in a couple of books for tuning in a murder. One was on an old cold case, and the book was called He Killed Our Janny. And the other was a recent murder case that was out of Palm Springs. And and it was, I can't even think of his name offhand. It was somebody who was an investor, and they burned his body in the desert. And then the other one I did was one in Canada. So I was on a missing persons website, and people would call, and that was my gratis work. I would do some of that. So, and one of them, who's out of Toronto, her daughter was murdered by her live-in boyfriend, and so they taped it and handed that to the police.
Heavy.
Yeah, yeah,
Your work is heavy duty.
yeah.
And you do consultations on telephone, but via the telephone as well?
I have clients worldwide, so my clients out of state and out of the country, I either read by phone or by Skype. There's all kinds of great technology these days. And when people ask me, well, how do you do it over the phone? When I'm reading someone face to face, the other people that I'm tuning into for them aren't in the room anyway. So if it's somebody deceased or somebody living, they're not there. So it doesn't matter. In psychic land, it's all the same. We're all connected out of our bodies.
You do classes, development classes?
I do classes.
What is that?
I did do a couple here. I taught in Arizona for 19 years, develop and control your psychic ability through guided meditation, visualization. And I really believe everybody has the ability because we are spiritual beings. The difference between myself and someone else is that it's supposed to be my career. So let's say you are a composer or do piano. You know, the difference between you and someone else would be that you feel empty when you're not playing the piano. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or I compare it with tennis, that anybody can play tennis and knock the ball around, and then there are those that really love it and play it a few times a week, and then there are those that are passionate about it and become professionals. So it's the same thing, but everybody does have some ability, and they can learn through meditation, through finding that spot where we're at a level where you're picking up on somebody's channel. I just want to say, yeah, because we're all made of atoms and molecules that vibrate at a frequency, and everybody can get to a level where you can pick up on other people's energy. So we each have our own channel. So I'm showing people how to zero in on another person's channel and advance it forward or backward in time.
What type of psychic healing have you done?
I can move some energy around.
Can you move objects?
No, but when I did the Silva course, that was the last thing we did, was bending a spoon. And we were all at a certain level that it was easy enough to do that. But no, that isn't my thing. That's telekinesis. I would say with psychic healing, once you're tuning someone in, like you can move a headache, things like that. I've done some energy work, but I don't claim to be a healer in that way. If I see things, like let's say I'm tuning somebody in and it really is bugging me, like something about their head, I'll say to them, you know, I keep being drawn to this area. You really need to get it checked. I'm not going to say to somebody, oh, by the way, your life is ending right now. I don't look for things like that, and usually I don't attract things like that. But if I see something that I'm not comfortable with, I will let the person know, you know, I'm not sure what that is, go get it checked, and I'll refer them to a doctor. If I'm tuning someone in and I can feel some neck pain or a headache, it's easy enough to just remove it right then and there. That's simple. Because you're just, again, it's all vibration. It's all, when I'm reading somebody, the best way to describe that too is like, picture putting oil and vinegar in one of those cruets, you know, when you used to make your own salad dressing, how they look separate. And then you shake it up and the oil and the vinegar mix. That's what a reading is. And people are doing that all the time when they come in contact with somebody. Notice when you're around somebody, you may get a weird vibe, or all of a sudden you have a thought that crosses your mind and you go, where the hell did that come from? That's you merging with somebody's energy. So when I'm tuning in, I'm deliberately doing that. And then when the reading's over, or when you walk away from somebody, you notice that it sometimes takes a few minutes, sometimes a few seconds, and then you're back to yourself. So that's really how it is in connecting and merging with people.
People should be more aware that people can read them. Two of the doctors I go to snap up a partial diagnosis the minute their new patient walks into the room. What is he or she wearing? What is their face like? Are they happy? Are they sad? How are they dressed? Are they pleased with themselves? Are they doing things to make themselves happy? Are they involved? How are they walking? And then come the tests. So the good healers have a little bit of that ability. They know the signs, what to look for, how to find. So in a sense, they're making a judgment, if not a judgment call, then an evaluation of you as a person, thus as a patient.
See, tuning in though is more of, I think, a right brain thing. And if you're trained in more of a left brain, it's hard to spot that stuff. I will tell you, when I was living in Arizona, I had an office and people would come in, and sometimes people have a really good facade. I know I used to. So you can look at somebody and they're happy and smiling and joking and think everything's fine. And then you tune them in and go, wait a minute, whoa, you're really an angry person, right? And they're like, yeah, but you wouldn't know it looking at them. So you can't always spot it with people. Think of the times you've been sitting in front of someone and they're smiling and happy, but you get a bad feeling about them. You're not comfortable with them. So you're seeing their facade, but you're feeling something different. It's like the old cliche, you can't judge a book by its cover.
Well, I think you can make a good first call
with some things,
with the cover.
Yeah, there's some people that are really good with it, though, yeah.
Do you do hypnosis?
I am a certified hypnotherapist since 1995. I don't use it that frequently. This psychic, medium, clairvoyant stuff is more my specialty. But I will get calls I had a couple of calls where somebody lost their car because they were drunk and couldn't remember where it was. So I hypnotized them to find it. And I've done some things for test taking, people that have done test taking.
Oh, I'm a firm believer in hypnosis.
Yeah, it's great, but it's not my specialty. So I don't use it for like weight and to quit smoking, things like that with people. I tell them to go to somebody who is more of a medical hypnotherapist. In fact, no, I have clients that are horse breeders that would call me.
Oh, that's
to
okay.
Tune in. Yeah,
How
so I've
did
tuned
you
into
tuned
horses.
into the horses?
Oh, I love their energy.
Like a horse whisperer?
Well, they'll give me the name of, I can tune in animals, and so that includes horses, but horses have a really interesting, strong energy personality.
They're strong animals. They're smart animals.
So I'll pick up on things like sometimes people will call and say, would you tune in my horse? Why is it behaving a certain way? Or what's going on with it? It seems uncomfortable, so I can pick up what's going on with its body. If there's a problem with a foot, a leg, or a stomach issue, or a rib, or something like that. I do all kinds of silly things.
What are you going to do next? Are you going to write another book? How do you,
I mostly...
You've got so much to give to people, so much
Oh,
to
that's so
say that
sweet.
people aren't aware of.
I write a lot of self-help articles, so I have, and they get published in some of the recovery newspapers. I've started another book called Going Down the Psychedelic Corridor, but I haven't quite been motivated. In the last couple of years, I've lost both my parents.
Oh, that's always
So,
sad.
yeah, so it was dealing with that. Yeah. I do some fun things like there's a company called Shine, and Isabel Story has it, and she'll pick a topic every month, and I will submit sometimes a story. It's an 8-minute true story. So it usually is like something like, when it rained, how did you, create value? So I did one that was like making lemonade out of lemons. I mean, we all have stuff in our life, and I've really had to learn how to trust that there's something greater than me running the show, and how to learn how to let go and go with the flow. So, it doesn't mean not feeling feelings, but feeling the feelings and then going, okay, when is it no longer serving me? How can I look at, what's coming up and what are some of the options? Or how can I turn this into something positive for myself? And again, I really believe that's what life is. It's just this, and learning how to let go and go with the flow. And for me, I had to have a higher power. So I see my higher power as a movie director who is running this soap opera. And really that's what faith is. Faith is going through your life with the uncertainty of something you might be going through, but trusting that there's light at the end of the tunnel. That I can't control the things outside of me. I can only control my behavior, how I am as a parent, as a person, as a friend, as, in my career, how much I can be of service to people, and then the rest is out of my control.
So all of the problems and vicissitudes that you've gone through in your past have made you the person that you are now.
Yeah.
And are still building on, apparently.
Yeah. Yeah. I've learned to enjoy life, not have any would-have, could-have, should-haves. That was a big one when my brother was dying. That was probably the most, a pivotal point for me, because I saw as he was dying, he was 35, almost 36, and I saw how people, came by every day and told him how much he would be missed and how loved he was. And I thought about that it isn't about the quantity of time, it's about the quality of time. And so I'm all about really experiencing life. I mean, in my 50s, I decided I was going to ride a motorcycle. So I took the class and got a Harley. And after wiping out, I decided maybe I shouldn't be riding a Harley anymore. So I sold it when I moved back here 5 years ago. But it's always trying something new. That's where I get the thrill, is trying something new. And whereas when I was younger, I always worried about what people thought of me. And now what's more important is what I think of me.
Well, we'll end on that very positive, inspirational note. And I want to thank you so very much and tell our audience that your books are available at our library. And to thank you again.
And on Amazon.
And on Amazon.
Amazon.
Good.
And on my website.
I'm glad you said that.
And these are them.
And do you teach any meditation classes?
I was teaching here. I'm talking to Kathy again about doing them again. So
I want to thank you. I want to thank the Media Operations Department, the City of Calabasas, and the Calabasas Library, and Friends of the Calabasas Library, and leave you with the words of a philosopher that you may not know philosophizes, Elizabeth Taylor, who, in the words of Elizabeth Taylor, says, "Now is the time for guts and guile," as indeed it is, and you have both. And thank you very much.